Hey everyone, what's happening? I'm Adam, this is Go To Outdoors, and I would love to welcome you to the channel. It is a gorgeous day today. I mean, totally blue sky, not a single cloud up here. Crisp, breezy, you can tell from the wind indicator, there's a little breeze coming through. But the main reason I am outside today is because, as many of you all know, I did recently harvest my first buck, and therefore I now have venison in the freezer. So, what am I going to do with it? I decided to put it all into the grind. So what I'm going to do with this first batch is just make a whole bunch of kielbasa, and make a couple other things, chili, things like that. But the kielbasa, my old family recipe that was passed down from my grandfather on my mom's side, involves a lot of smoke and a lot of slow cooking there. But I don't have a smoker, and I don't know if you've done any shopping recently on a lot of the smokers that have been available online, but you don't really get a lot of bang for your buck. I mean, you spend a couple $100 and you get something you might be able to put, I don't know, a couple chunks of meat on. Maybe at the biggest, some of the ones that are made out of like a 55-gallon drum, like a pit cooker or something like that, yeah, you can get some volume out of those. But I'm looking to have something where I can hang a lot of kielbasa on, and in the future, put a rack on, do a lot of smoking for jerky and things like that. So what I'm doing is I'm putting together a DIY smokehouse that does two things. One, it has enough volume inside that I can hang a bunch of sausages, a bunch of kielbasa, a bunch of things on the dowel rods on top. And I also want it to be portable. I kind of want to have a design where I can take it down using hinges and locks and things like that. But it's not going to be too expensive, but I want it to have a lot of volume. So what I got to do, of course, is I do need to go to the store. I need to pick up a few things. And yes, I'm kind of designing this on the fly, so bear with me on that. But what I am going to do is once I get everything squared away, once I settle on the design, I'm going to be throwing it together and show you a good part of that. Come on, focus camera. There we go. And what I wanted to do is, because I don't want to have a dedicated propane or anything that I have to rely on for that, what I'm going to use is actually this right here. This is a fire pit that I actually built a couple years ago, and well, it's seen some use because the weather's been fantastic, and there's few things that are as good as spending time around a fire pit in the evenings, especially on a nice crisp fall day like today. I might even have another fire soon before I get to smoking the meats. But either way, that's neither here nor there. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to hop to the store, and yeah, I'll be back when I have everything together. Okay, officially had a great trip to Home Depot. Did a lot of designing on the fly, but that's what I came up with. Managed to get 5 pieces of plywood, well, 2 sheets of plywood. They were 3/4 inch ply. They were not pressure treated. They were not OSB sheathing or anything like that. Just because the resin's in there, I didn't want any of that heating up with the smoker. Just straight old, plain old vanilla plywood. So 2 full sheets of the 3/4 inch I had them cut right down the middle. Your big box store should be able to do that for you. You don't need any fancy equipment for that. So got 4 of those, and for the top, I did get 1 piece of 1/2 inch because I'm going to have 48-inch cube essentially that I'm building into the smoker here. So, and the 1/2 inch is just the same plywood. For the rods that I'm going to be hanging the sausage and the kielbasa from, I just got these 1 1/4 inch by 48-inch dowel rods. These are poplar. Wood choice doesn't really matter too much. If it bothers you, or if all you can find is pine or something else like that, you can always wrap those later with cling wrap or foil or whatever you want to do for that. It's not 100% necessary. Just you want to make sure those are clean, simply because you're going to be putting food on there, and after all, you want to be clean when you're making your food for yourself. So got the fancy little watcher GoPro up here so we can watch the rest of the construction that I'm doing here But let's give you a quick rundown of the materials that I picked up along with that. And of course, you got to remember when you're working with all this stuff, you want to be safe. So you want to have something covering your eyes. Again, yes, I am wearing sunglasses. I know it's severely unprofessional talking to you guys, but it is super bright and they are going to be protecting my eyes. And of course, bring your hearing protection if you're using stuff like a circular saw. So you got to stay safe out there. Got a little bit of hardware to go along with the wood that I'm using here today. And that does include 4 of these gate hinges. Again, the idea behind this was to make it so you could take it down and it's somewhat portable. It's not a permanent hard smokehouse that I'm building here. So 4 gate hinges, those are about $6 pop. And I got 4 of these little gate latches, lock latches. And that's what I'm going to be using to hold everything together. And those were, I think, about $6 a piece as well. So not really too much invested. Obviously, right now lumber prices are absolutely silly. So I can't even give you a real idea of what that could possibly be when you're seeing this video, because it could go up, could go down. I don't know. I don't know the future. The last thing, of course, is I got 4 2x4s, 2x4 by 96. They're what I'm going to be using to screw onto the sides of the plywood sheets to give support, give a little bit of rigidity, and also some place where you can set the dowel rods down while you're hanging your meat, your food, whatever you're smoking. So let me do a couple little prep work things. I got to trim off a couple ends, take care of some stuff, but I will be back as soon as I get that together. All right, so you'll see now that I have turned the 4 2x4s into 8. The shorter ones that I have here, I made 44.5 inches. These longer ones are 46.5 inches. You'll see why I have 2 different lengths when I get on to one of the next steps, but now that I have them cut to length, I need to make sure, I'm going to do a quick test fit, make sure everything's kind of where I want it to be, and then I'll come back and do the next step in the process. So bear with me. Okay, so sunglasses back on. I've done a couple measurements. What I did, and I'm going to show you real quick. You know what? Let me spin you around here. Okay, what we've got here, you'll see I took 2 of the boards, and these are the 2 of the 46.5 inch long 2x4 cuts. And obviously I clamped them together. And what I did was I took a couple measurements. And what I did here, you'll see on some of these spots here, every 6 inches, from 8 to 38 inches, I have extra lines. Those lines are actually for what I'm going to be doing next. And that next step is going to be cutting notches. And what the notches are for is these 2 particular 2x4s are going to be the top half of the sides for the main box. And the notches are going to be for the dowel rods to actually sit in when they're loaded down with meat, because it's kind of a safer thing to have. If you're taking the time to put the effort into making all of this stuff, or anything for that matter, that you're preparing to put into the smoker, you're going to want it to stay in place. You're going to want it to not swing around, roll around, or God forbid fall off. So the notches here are going to be kind of preventing that. It's going to be a little bit of security for those dowel rods. You know, is it overkill? Probably, but you know, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, especially when you're curing meats. So let me get on this and I'll be right back. It's almost like I planned that. Okay, so finally have a little bit of an update. We're doing a mock-up now of the sides of the box. Obviously bottom, we have the 48-inch square plywood now, and we have some of the side slats, the 2x4s that were originally 46.5 inches. Because we're trying to leave a little bit of space right here, as you can see, gonna want a 3/4 inch space on either side, so the other sides can actually slot in there evenly once we articulate everything together with the hinges and the locks that I was mentioning earlier. So now we have the 46.5 inch is now about 46.25 because those had to get knocked down a little bit, and now of course they line up. And we have them mocked up a little bit, of course, where they're going to be. And this, of course, like I said, is the side. This is going to be the bottom. The bottom 2x4 here is going to be flush. It's going to be flush with it just because we're going to have the support as far down as we can. On the top section here, the top of the 2x4s, of course, when you line them up with a 3/4 inch gap on either side, the top here is going to be 10 inches down. Of course, the bottom is going to be about 14-ish because your measurements on your 2x4s can vary a little bit. And just the sides, because this is the one obviously you can see with the notches for the dowel rods here, we want this not to be completely on the top. We want to have a little bit of headspace so the smoke can circulate, that can stay up here, and not completely cook just one half of the sausages as they're sitting on the roll, on the dowel rods. So this will give us some room to breathe, so to speak, and it also help with ventilation, but that's another step altogether. But right now, we're gonna get this puppy flipped over, get it mocked up, and then yeah, we're gonna do the two sides, and then we'll bring it back for the front and back. So we'll be back in a second. As you can see, we've got it flipped over and we're ready to start screwing this on here. So what I'm using is number 10 by 1.5 inch. It says sheet metal screws, but I'm gonna use them for wood because they're just fine for that. It's not gonna hurt anything. But I got these ones because I didn't want them going all the way through. I didn't want any bare metal sticking through to where I was actually gonna be having the smoke. Just no real reason. I just didn't want anything to possibly corrode. But that'll hold just fine. Only bought a 50 pack of these, so got to be a little bit judicious with how I'm using them. So I'm only going to be using 6 on the bottom and 6 on the top for each of the 4 sides. So let's get on this. Keep that. Okay, so we got the bottom 2x4 screwed in place. You'll see we have, a little bit of a staggered position on the screws that we used, just to help kind of even out the stresses in the 2x4 and the plywood itself. So now, of course, we flipped everything back over. We went to the top side and we clamped on the bottom here the 2x4 that has the notches in it for the dowel rods. And you'll see here we kind of did a little bit of a cheat. It's kind of an easy thing to keep everything in place. We took a line from the very top of here. You'll see down here we've got a couple marks, and that mark, each of those marks corresponds with a line that goes 10.5 inches from the top of here, which is exactly going to be the top of the 2x4. Just something to help you keep everything lined up as you go through and you screw everything else. So again, on the top here, we've got 6 screws in the bottom. We've got 6 screws in the top. Already popped one in here. Things went a little squirrely. Of course, you got to do retakes sometimes on things like this, so that's what we're doing. And now, just going to screw in the rest of these. So let's get to it. Okay, we're on to the next one now. Saved a couple steps here and we managed to clamp everything together all at one go because we got the experimentation done on the first one. So now this is the top, this is the bottom, and again we have the marks that somebody's getting some deer today too. So these are the marks that cover the very top of the 2x4 beneath. So now, same as the other one, it's just a rinse and repeat, adding 6 screws to each row. All right, so that is the 2 sides done. Now we're going to work on the front and the back. So get this taken away, set up the next one, and I'll be right back. Okay, fast forward probably about a half hour, a couple bad words and a little bit of frustration. Things are starting to come together. So I'll show you the progress. Obviously did the old rinse and repeat on the sides that were not notched. So this of course is the notch side, and let's get you a look on what it looks like on the inside. So got your 2 things of 2x4s. Sorry for my shadow. And this is the front side or the back. It really doesn't matter once they're together, but the sides of course are the ones that have the notched 2x4 for those dowel rods. And this is going to give you a bit of an idea of what we're thinking getting things together. So as the hinges are on here, this will articulate. So that's why we left those gaps. So everything fits together square and it makes things just a little bit neater from the outside. So speaking of the outside, these of course are those gate hinges. And that's what we're going to use here. because of the way you could see the gaps on the 2x4s, or sorry, the plywood, the outside two holes would not actually work. So they're just really being held together by the two farthest out screws in both the top and the bottom. But that's basically what's going on with that now. So this is the mock-up, kind of semi-finished version of one side. Now we're going to rinse and repeat and do the other half, and once we get that looking kind of together, I'll bring you back and show you roughly the scale of the smoker box, just to give you finally give you a point of view on how big this thing is going to be. So I'm excited. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. And welcome to the inside of the smoker. I'm sitting down. I am in here because I need to do some of the final stages, but long story short, I've got it all mocked up. The hinges are on both of the outsides, this corner and this corner behind me. Now I have to install the inside hinges, which is why I'm inside of the box, the hot box, the torture chamber. Of all the places I thought I'd find myself today, the inside of a smoker is not actually one of them. Anyway, let's get to it. We're going to get these mocked up, and once they're together, I'll bring you back. Yeah, so here we are, sitting at the point of view of smoked meats inside of this smoke box. Obviously, you can see the dowel rods are now in place, and it's going to give you a zoom in on how they actually look in the notches. So, they can move a little bit, but they will settle into place. And that's actually kind of the whole point of having those the way that they were. And yeah, there's a little bit of play in the box here, but right now that hinge, as you can see, now that it's installed, is currently being secured by a screwdriver. And of course, got the hinge on the bottom as well. That's good to go. But when everything is all said and done, that's just going to be wedged shut with whatever comes to hand. Could be a stick. I don't think I'd put another screwdriver in here just because the heat would be a little bit too much for the plastic on the handle, but that's neither here nor there. The main thing is the play that you can see front and back. That's kind of by design. I didn't want this thing being 100% completely airtight because, again, this is portable. This is something you could tear down, something you could store away for the next time you're going to be using it. Easy setup, easy takedown. And this is going to be a top load design. So obviously you can see I do not have the lid on this thing yet, but everything, once the kielbasa and everything, whatever the smoked sausages or whatever I'm making are on these dowels, they're going to be lowered in from the top. And the lid is just going to be something we lay on top. I don't think there's going to be any kind of securing device. I'm not going to bother with that, just because when everything is getting cooked, the smoke and everything, the heat's in here, I'm going to be able to just cant the lid a little bit to kind of control the temperature that's in here. I'm going to be finding a place to drill one, if not two different thermometer probe holes, because again, you want to be aware of what the temperatures are of whatever you happen to be cooking in here. And that's kind of it for this step. It's shockingly comfortable in here. I'm not going to say I'm jealous of whatever goes in here, but I'm going to appreciate the hell out of it. But that's going to be for another episode. But we got to keep going on this and the next couple steps as I wait for some battery packs to charge, which is kind of why I stopped right now. Yeah, let's get to it. I'm going to show you the next step, kind of how we're going to be directing the heat from the fire into this pit. So hold please. I'll bring you back when I get back out of this thing. Okay, after unfortunately a few more hours and a lot more cussing, managed to get this together. So let's give us a look at what we got here. It is a 48-inch cube. Yeah, of course, pop off the top. The extra cussing actually came from the top here. We're added on some furring strips on the sides. And on the front and the back, added another 2x4. And that was just because the top, there we go. And that's just because the top itself, being a 48-inch square, was kind of not fitting the way it was. Because unfortunately, this is never going to be square the way it's together. The fact that, we have hinges on the outside and those little gate keys on the inside, it was always going to have a couple issues. Speaking of the hinges on the inside, right now they're actually held together with pieces of, let's get this out, hang on, crepe myrtle. Had a crepe myrtle with a lot of extra twigs here on the, right outside the house in the garden, and they work just fine in those holes, you know, to keep everything pinned together. So, got the dowel rods back in there now that everything's reattached, so let's give you a look at what that is entirely all together. Got my little handy flashlight, and that's what we have. Got a nice big smoker box. Dowel rods are in place. And pretty much what that's going to do is have everything squared away and ready to go. There we go, now it's off. So that's pretty much where we want it to be. Ready to get a couple things slapped together. Of course, it's going to get disassembled. Let's get to some light again. Come on, come on. There we go. So it's going to get disassembled. It's going to get moved down to where the fire pit is. But, of course, the construction so far just covers the actual smoker box itself. What we need to cover now is actually how we're going to be getting the heat from the fire, the smoke from the fire, into the smoker box, which, let's turn around. Okay, obviously you can see sunset is coming around over there, so I'm fighting lighting issues because this camera likes to argue with low light. Anyway, what we've got now, you've seen the actual box here. You know, we got the huge big old smoker box. Everything's squared away here, and I'm going to give you a better rundown of that when I get everything together. Of course, it's going to be broken down and moved down to the fire pit, that region-ish, when we go to actually do the smoke. But in order to get the heat and the smoke from the fire pit into the smoke box itself, here's what I got. Just a couple extra pieces. I got an 8-inch galvanized steel HVAC. It's a T, 8-inch T, and that's going to be inside the box itself, heading, I'm assuming it's going to be helping to spread the heat out a little bit more evenly inside. I got 2 sections of 8-inch round, 8-inch by 5 foot, and that's going to be my piping to get the heat from the fire into the actual box. And over the fire, I have just an 8-inch swivel. It's a connector, and that's going to be, I'm going to be able to kind of angle that down like this, and in order to control the heat going into the pipe, that fire pit is actually big enough that we're going to be moving around the coals, adding a couple things, you know, adding sticks and everything to get the smoke that we want. And I'm going to try and get everything together tonight. Like I said, I'm fighting light, so I'm going to try and get this taken care of. You may not see me back again until tomorrow, but once everything's together and everything looks about like it should, I will definitely bring you back to see what this looks like. Okay, welcome back to Adam's brainstorming sessions. So the smoker box itself, I am going to end up doing a couple tweaks. I'm not really satisfied with how those hinges kind of don't have very many hard mounting points, and yesterday when I was trying to get everything squared up, I managed to get everything squared up, but I had to use a ratchet strap around the whole thing to do that, and I don't want to have a ratchet strap on there when I'm actually cooking because I want it to be somewhat solid, and that just felt a little janky to me. Either way, the one thing I am satisfied with right now is the ducting, the pipes, the 2 pipes I was mentioning that I'm going to be using to transfer the heat and smoke from the fire pit into the smoker itself. So once again, just a quick once over. These are 5 foot by 8-inch diameter HVAC ducting. So I got 2 of those, obviously one for the T, one for the bend, and on top of one, like I was just saying, there is a bend. These segments here can actually kind of articulate anywhere from 90 degrees all the way out to straight up. So you don't exactly have to have a perfect 90-degree bend. They do make those, but this is actually more functional based on kind of how I have the pipe at a given time. And again, on the other, I just have an 8-inch T. And these are all galvanized steel, like I was saying. And I have them held together just with some stainless steel, small, 1/4-inch hex head, self-tapping sheet metal screws. But apart from that, that's kind of where I'm sitting at this point in time with the rough draft. Like I said, I have been designing this on the fly and I have been making changes. Is that adding to my budget? Yeah, but all the parts that I have, I can take off and use just as well on something else. So it's not wasted money. And believe me, I will be having other projects and other builds, not necessarily this, but similar in terms of useful outdoor products going forward. But right now, that's all I got for you. The next episode, I'm going to have everything finalized, everything put together, squared away, and more than likely, you're going to see it set up down there, getting ready to put some meat on the fire. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. But that's all I got for you today, so like I always say, thanks again for watching. Make sure you find yourself a reason to smile today, and I'll catch you in the next one.